Today, my old Maui friend, Natalia Ra, shares what it's like to be the CFO of Bitcoin.com. And then I get to ask her about color and perception and what potential there is in the blockchain for recording research like that.
Let's say there was an intelligent machine. It would need to have programming to understand and perceive color. Oh my God, blockchain works just like a neural network. And each node has information that a lot of the other nodes have it, and there's overlap and there's re-recording. That way, if you take out, a few nodes, then, the system still remains.
Maybe you could just start, could you just give us your background and sort of how you got into cryptocurrency?
Sure. So I'm Natalia Ra. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Bitcoin.com.
Bitcoin.com, where you're working, is different than Bitcoin. Can you explain that distinction to our listeners?
Well, that's a very good question. So, when I first went and started researching about Bitcoin myself, I really didn't know who owns Bitcoin, which organization is responsible for it. I kind of figured that the guys with Bitcoin.com were going to be legit, so I went to the site and luckily was able to join the company. So Bitcoin is an open source protocol, as you may be aware. So no one actually owns Bitcoin. There are teams of developers that develop the actual code, the source code upon which Bitcoin rests. But no one actually can claim to own it.
How did you end up getting involved in Bitcoin and working at Bitcoin.com?
It was really like a stroke of fate. I was thinking about my next career move after I moved back to Hawaii, and so I started envisioning what it was that I wanted to do, and I knew I wanted to work for people who are helping to make the world better, and somebody who I would be aligned with philosophically as well. So I kind of had a general idea. I wasn't really sure where to go. I have an economics background, so I was, I've been interested in topics like the future of money for a long time, and what money is and how it is being used as an instrument and all the various implications of that. So sometime last August, a friend of a friend contacted me to help them to do some social media for a Russian news site that covered cryptocurrency space. So all I had to do was read some articles and summarize them for social media for Facebook. But basically I started reading these articles about Ethereum, about Bitcoin, about the blockchain, about what it's doing and the various developments in it, and it just blew my mind.
So you fell into this through translation.
Right. I wasn't even translating. We had a group of translators. I was just basically reading the articles and writing short summaries on Facebook to just very quick little blurbs for each article that was being produced. But they wanted people, they wanted somebody who understood both Russian and English, because the source of the articles was Russian and they were translated into English. And sometimes, being in the world of all new methodologies, sometimes I had to read the article in both Russian and English to be able to understand it fully. What it was that I was talking about. And so reading this, my mind was just blown. I mean, I've heard of Bitcoin in the past, sometimes not in the most favorable light, the way it was circulating in the media, in 2011 and 12. But I never stopped to think about what it is and what it means. And, once I started reading, I couldn't stop. That project lasted only 1 week. But I was completely hooked. I mean, that was it. And I went online, and luckily, I think Bitcoin.com was the first site I went to, and they had an opening, and I applied.
So I saw you 1 year ago, right? I saw you last year. You hadn't started working for these guys. This has happened so fast, right?
You know what? I think that was right during when I was starting to become involved with them. Yeah, it was. If it was the case, I was probably on cloud 9, like my feet weren't touching the ground.
How would you define cryptocurrency?
Well, I've been thinking about the concept of money for a long time, and what money actually is and where does it derive value from, because I do have an economics background, and so I tend to nerd out a little bit on those topics. And so what exactly is money? So once I started reading about Bitcoin being a consensus network between, it's basically a peer-to-peer network, and it doesn't It's just so the way that we have money now, I mean, the reason where it derives value from is everybody believes that the U.S. dollar has value, and the government promises you that it has value, and maintains it through various instruments, maintains the value of U.S. dollar, make sure it doesn't fall too much, or it regulates inflation through various instruments. But the fact remains is that the reason why fiat currencies have value is their inherent belief in the monetary system that it has value. So here you can have a system that is based on that premise, that people who engage in the system or the ecosystem of Bitcoin, they believe in its inherent value. And the reason they believe in it is because Bitcoin actually has very strict rules about how it is created. Its supply is limited. There's no unlimited dilution of the value of Bitcoin through various monetary policies. No one can just print more Bitcoins. I mean, it is being mined all the time, but the difficulty increases so that you don't have a dump of Bitcoins onto the market.
Right. Okay. So the value itself of Bitcoin, they've made the algorithm, the mining, be more difficult to decrease the supply, thereby increasing the value. What about other cryptocurrencies? Like, where do all of these things fall into place, and what sort of underlies the strength of them?
Exactly.
I'm just trying to understand, if there's an underlying stability that we can be sure of, or what is required in cryptocurrency to give us the underlying stability that we could trust this.
Well, I mean, I think adoption is the major driving force of the value going up, and the inherent belief in its value. And so, but even beyond that, if you think about Bitcoin, one Bitcoin takes about $1,000 to create. So Bitcoin isn't just a piece of paper that it's printed with pictures on top. Bitcoin is a very valuable technology, and so there's actually a cost of producing the Bitcoin. So there's inherent value in it, that it's that it's actual code that is being created, and then the value of it is also driven by more and more people believing that it's going to have value. So they look at Bitcoin as an investment asset. Obviously, there's some speculation that's happening too, as happens with any currencies or other assets. So Bitcoin, in a way, it's a crossover. Like all the cryptocurrencies, they're a crossover asset. They're money, and they also function as an asset. Like I don't want to call it a stock, but stock is a type. It's an instrument. It's a financial instrument, but it isn't money per se. So Bitcoin it's a digital asset. All cryptocurrencies are digital assets, and so they're driven by the laws of supply and demand.
Okay.
As are other assets, financial assets.
Digital assets, an asset class. That's a term we've heard before. You equated $1,000 to the cost of creating a Bitcoin, and
the founder and CEO of Bitcoin.com, Roger Ver, is one of the first investors in the Bitcoin space.
So you work for one of the more well-known Bitcoin icons, Roger Ver. Tell us about him a little bit.
He helped, fund many Bitcoin and cryptocurrency related startups. So we believe that Bitcoin is the future of money, and what the internet did for information, Bitcoin is going to do for money. So we have a little slogan on the site that Bitcoin is the internet of money.
So what would stop Bitcoin?
I mean, I would say the two issues would be scalability and network congestion. So as you're aware, on August 1st, there was a hard fork of Bitcoin Cash from the Bitcoin protocol, and Bitcoin Cash um, will allow a much larger block size, which means that there's, more transactions can be recorded per block.
So this is what was known as the Bitcoin hard fork, or SegWit, segmentation witness. And it's coming upon us again, it sounds like, another hard fork for Bitcoin. Originally, what was the advantage of the first hard fork that created Bitcoin Cash?
The network fees are so much lower for Bitcoin Cash than they are for Bitcoin, and so this came from developers not agreeing how to deal with the problem of traffic of Bitcoin becoming quite so popular and successful, and so that is certainly something that that is important to consider.
As I understand it, Bitcoin as an algorithm, as a sort of a peer-to-peer code out there, it's showed itself to be sort of slow.
One of the solutions was the hard forking of Bitcoin Cash, which increased the block size. So essentially, Bitcoin Cash is, it rests upon the same blockchain that Bitcoin did historically. So it's on that date, an exact replica of the blockchain was created for Bitcoin Cash. But from that day forward, Bitcoin continued as in Bitcoin, but on the split blockchain, Bitcoin Cash started operating, on its own transactions. So now they're two separate currencies that share the same history.
Which one do you use?
We use both. We use Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, and definitely find that Bitcoin Cash is a lot faster with much less transaction fees. I mean, significantly smaller transaction fees. So, and Bitcoin Cash is created to be able to scale much faster, to support a much faster scaling.
You just covered a lot of territory. Fork being this decision that they're going to split Bitcoin, but still the value is is it arbitrary?
It's very important to hear about Bitcoin Cash, especially for anybody that did hold Bitcoin on the date of the split, because you are entitled to the same amount of Bitcoin Cash units as you had of Bitcoin. And this is something not everyone was aware of. And so, theoretically, if you had 10 Bitcoins in a wallet, you should have 10 Bitcoin Cash as well. And, Bitcoin Cash is trading at around, I guess, $500 right now. So there's certainly value in it. When I started with Bitcoin.com, about a year ago, Bitcoin was trading around 650, and so we've reached almost 5,000 this year. So people should know that they need to learn how to access their Bitcoin Cash, because, because it's a very, very valuable currency that is going to gain a lot of traction, and it's their money that they are entitled to.
So this is where it gets so confusing. I mean, like, if I had Bitcoin and it's split in this hard fork of blah blah blah, and the new thing comes out, Bitcoin Cash, like, what happens to my Bitcoin? Do I have to be actively paying attention to this? Do I just get equal value? Like, it's so confusing. It's so strange. I mean, it just seems that the value of Bitcoin itself is corely based on its sort of historical value, its storage value, its brand name. But as a functional currency, it doesn't sound so great.
Right. Well, that's the billion-dollar question. So I think Bitcoin, it has been considered to be the digital gold and the standard of all the cryptocurrencies that all the other currencies measure against. Whether or not there were some other currencies that they looked at Bitcoin and looked at some of the issues that Bitcoin faced, and then they incorporated into their protocol. For example, how decisions are being made in order to augment the code, where the participants can actually vote on the system. So whether or not those currencies are going to overtake Bitcoin at a certain point, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball for it. I do think that being the leader and sort of the original contract and the original cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, does have, more than just a first mover advantage. I mean, there are a lot of very smart people that are working on developing it, and it has gotten quite the backing, so all around the world. So it's a market leader in terms of market cap and having and in terms of adoption as well.
Okay, cool. So what types of things do you see happening from here? Like, where does this go?
Well, I think that purchasing a mining contract might be a great way to start earning Bitcoins. And Okay, so at Bitcoin.com we offer cloud mining services. So instead of mining is the way that Bitcoin is created. So that's the process of writing this code and solving the equations upon which the Bitcoin protocol is based. So the process of mining, it unlocks Bitcoins, and whoever unlocks them um, gets to keep a certain percentage of the Bitcoin. So you can join, instead of purchasing a server or a mining server, one can purchase a cloud mining, can purchase cloud mining hash rate. And so with that hash rate, it's basically you're purchasing a certain amount of power from a large Bitcoin farm that's mining. I know it's kind of a strange methodology, a farm that is mining these Bitcoins. And so you will have a certain amount of Bitcoins that are created, and you will get a certain percentage of the Bitcoins that are created in a pool.
So,
Deposit.
so can you explain how mining works? You mentioned that it costs $1,000 to create a single Bitcoin, and the cost goes to mining, and people can be miners. What is that about?
Right, so they can purchase at pool.bitcoin.com, and then there are some other providers as well. They can purchase what is called a contract, and the lifetime contract will give you a certain amount of hash rate, which is like bandwidth or the power, hashing power of creating the Bitcoins, and with certain expected returns. So every day, every minute of every day, you're creating uh, certain small parts of Bitcoin.
So it's the middle of October 2017, and Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, one of the largest financial institutions that incidentally was highly responsible for crashing our economy not just 8, 9 years ago, he slammed on Bitcoin, and that same week, China basically cracked down and said no more cryptocurrency exchanges or new coins. Lots of negative news, and yet the value of Bitcoin seemed to maintain. How do you explain that?
Well, obviously, the concern is it's quite easy to point out. I think that um, I'm less concerned about what Jamie Dimon has to say about this. I'm more concerned about the exchanges being shut down in China. So people in China will no longer be able to sell their Bitcoins for fiat. And this is already something that's happened in Hawaii. The state passed a bit of legislation that effectively shut down all the exchanges as of last March. So for somebody who's a resident only in Hawaii with a Hawaiian bank account, there's not really, there's not a very quick way to gain liquidity of your Bitcoin into fiat currency. So that's a concern, because we still, not everybody accepts Bitcoin. We still have to, for people who maybe make money in Bitcoin, and that's, or cryptocurrencies, and that's their primary source of income, that's definitely a barrier for them to be able to use to be able to use the currencies. So any further moves like that on a global scale, of course, would dampen some of the excitement about it and probably have downwards pressure on the price.
So, what about friends who live in Hawaii? I have friends who live in my home state from 10 years ago, the last 10 years. And the state government of Hawaii basically said you can't use cryptocurrency. So, is there any way around that?
I would say you can mine Bitcoin. That's how you get around that. You can buy a mining contract, and you will, at the way, as long as the price of Bitcoin holds and continues to appreciate, you will be able to, make your investment back, a couple of times over in 1 year. And then if it's a lifetime contract, of course, while the mining is still profitable, you can do much better than that. So that would be my advice for somebody in Hawaii who wants to get some Bitcoin, is buy a mining contract and start mining your Bitcoins.
Where do folks go to find out more?
Well, sure. We have a news site, so news.bitcoin.com. That's one place to go to get yourself educated and keep up to speed with what's going on in the cryptocurrency space. But you can find all the links to all of those. You can find on the news site, and I would recommend following Roger Ver as well directly, as he has a very philosophical stance that kind of drives them forward. That is very interesting.
What else should we look forward to? What else would you direct our interest towards?
Sure, of course. Well, we mentioned the concern that we have, and I mentioned the concern that I have, and I would say the thing that I'm most excited about, is the potential to really change how the world operates. Change the whole financial system. Really, if we want to, it's possible. This is, it's right now, if you want to send a wire somewhere overseas, it can take 2-3 days. Transaction fees are really huge. Here, it's instant. All you need is confirmation on the blockchain, and it becomes tamper-proof.
Right. That's been a theme that I've heard, the ability to send money internationally.
Beyond that is also potential applications for voting and to increase the democratic process through the implementation of blockchain in voting technologies. Because we know this has been an issue all around the world. The question marks placed upon certain voting methodologies and how reliable they are and how hackable they are. And so the blockchain's being piloted actually in different areas. I know in Russia there are several areas that they've piloted blockchain voting. And then there are also some startups that are wanting to create voting technology based on the blockchain. So that to me is extremely exciting.
So that I'm passionate about color. You've known me for long enough to know that. How could the blockchain apply to color and perception, the work I'm doing with Hidoku?
What I'm hearing when you were talking about that is obviously my mind instantly goes to color recognition for artificial intelligence, obviously. So that's let's say there was an intelligent machine, it would need to have programming to understand and perceive color in the same way, that humans do.
Holy.
Right? I guess machines could be more open to, how they interpret color, which is basically via code. But I don't know. I just like when you said that, and I had a conversation with Jonath. I'm sure you know Jonath. He has a neuroscience degree from MIT, and when he and I have been having some conversations about the blockchain, he said, "Oh my God, blockchain works just like a neural network."
Oh my.
Neural network of nodes within the body, and then each node has information that a lot of the other nodes have it, and there's overlap and there's re-recording. That way, if you take out a few nodes, then the system still remains, which is the same with the blockchain. You have nodes that have multiple recordings of sort of the same transactions. It's confirmed hundreds of thousands of times every transaction, and every transaction is like it also can be seen as a choice or like as a decision, like in a color spectrum. It's a decision between which right? Which color it is, which shade, tone, or something like that. So
That you just took that even further than, and my imagination has gone very, very, very far with the concept of mapping color perception. How do we understand how we perceive differently? But you just dropped the mic on that.
I see it as like, I don't know, if they create an android or something like that, and the way that the android needs to perceive color, it probably would have a lot more capabilities than human, but it would have an option, right, in the way that humans perceive, and then you could map how animals perceive, how birds perceive, and there's probably all sorts of applications for research in that.
Natalia, it's been so awesome to have you.
Sure, of course. This is my pleasure.
Well, let's have you back. I would love to have you back on the show.
Okay, fantastic.
Thanks for being on.
Talk to you soon.
Coloring Crypto is now a weekly podcast, releasing new episodes every Sunday for newbies who are curious and experts who think they understand. Tweet us at Coloring Crypto and leave us a review on iTunes.
Coloring Crypto. Subscribe now.